Gary Community School Board Corporation is about to start its meeting. Would you stand with me to pledge allegiance to the flag?
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call.
Mr. Carlos Tolliver. Present. Ms. Darlene Pleasant. Present. Ms. Nellie F. Moore. Present. Mr. James M. Piggy.
Present.
Mr. Norman A. Bailey.
Present.
Mr. Robert L. Buggs, Sr.
Present. Having 7 members, we have a quorum for official business. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. Happy New Year.
Before I start this afternoon, there's a couple of issues that I want to discuss, and I wrote them down so that I won't forget them. So that will be the first order of business. There are several issues that must be addressed before I proceed. Absent of the president, the vice president assumes the duties of the president. Former President Rosa Washington resigned effective December 31st, 2017. Therefore, I, Robert Buggs, vice president of the Gary Community School Corporation, now assume the duties of the president. Established protocol and our bylaws authorize the board president to prepare and present the board meeting's agenda. The emergency manager, Dr. Peggy Hinckley, denied me that opportunity and prepared her own agenda for the board. I received an email from Dr. Hinckley which states, Mr. Buggs, in SCA 567, the board cannot vote on anything per ISBA, DUAB, and Indiana Department of Education. I must appoint officers. The statute, I read the statute. In addition, she provided a statute that was attached to that. And it says on the statute, on December the 13th, I met with the officials of the Indiana Department of Education, DUAB, and ISBA to receive direction about filling the vacancy for District 6. I was advised that the Gary has a special statute, see attached, which I have attached, but the takeover invalidates that statute. For this group, I must appoint District 6 representative. With that in mind, I want to engage the board in those interviews and recommendations. Now, the statute that she provided, I'm going to read it to you. In Indiana Code 20-23-12-10, it says vacancies. A vacancy of the governing body is created when a member, A, dies, B, resigns from the governing body. Further on in that statute, it says the governing body shall temporarily fill a vacancy of the governing body as soon as practicable after that occurs. Now, it further goes on to say I received another memo from Dr. Hinckley, but referring back to the one where she says that we cannot vote on anything because when she made that agenda, she did not include me or any of the board members. It's her agenda. But what I read to you at first, the first document, which says in SEA 567, the board cannot vote on anything. Therefore, the board cannot vote to accept the agenda. Therefore, because it requires a vote. Therefore, I declare Dr. Hinckley's agenda void due to no vote of acceptance. In reference to Dr. Hinckley's many assertions of being instructed by Indiana Department of Education, DUAB, and ISBA to appoint someone to the elected position vacancy in the 6th District per Senate Bill 567, she did not present any supporting statutes or General Assembly amendments to Senate Bill 567. I consider those assertions as hearsay and void of any legal authority. I contacted Michelle Feynman, Director of the Lake County Election Board, and Mr. Matthew Kochevar, Co-General Counsel of the Indiana State Election Division. I asked them if they were aware or had received any amendments to SEA 567 that gives absolute authority to the emergency manager to appoint elected board vacancies of the Gary Community School Corporation and appoint officers, and they said no. I received an email from Mr. Matthew Kochevar, co-general counsel of the Indiana Election Board Commission, and he said, and I will read it to you, Indiana Code 20-23-12-10 determines when a vacancy exists on the school board and how to be filled. By my reading, the school board fills any vacant seat on the board. That was from the General Counsel of the Indiana Election Division in Indianapolis. I asked them if that was anywhere, and they said no, of course. And then I also contacted Lisa P. Tansel, the staff attorney for the Indiana State Board of Association of Board of Trustees, or ISBA, for clarification. Attorney Tansel, in her opinion of SEA, in her opinion, she said SEA gives all authority to the emergency manager. I researched the term all authority in SEA 567, and I found it where did I find it? I found it under Indiana Code IC 6-1-20.3-6.8, and it reads as follows. Just a minute. Notwithstanding any other law, an emergency manager of a distressed political subdivision appointed under Section 7.5 of this chapter shall do and assume and exercise all of the power, authority, and responsibilities of both the executive and the fiscal body of the political subdivision during the time the political subdivision is in a distressed political subdivision. That's the only place in Senate Bill 567 that refers to all authority. But what they didn't notice, which is in bold lettering in this section 11C, this section applies to the Muncie Community Schools, not the Gary Community School Corporation. Therefore, when she refers to executive, that would be the superintendent, and fiscal means relating to public debt or something like that. As you know, 567, we don't have any dealings or authority over money at all, period. But 567 on page 12, Senate Bill 567, defines the Gary Community School Board of Trustees as the governing body, not a fiscal body. That is in the Senate Bill 567. I'm trying to have a meeting, please. I will now defer to the board's authority, our legal attorney, and I want to ask her some questions. Attorney Coleman, if the emergency manager, Dr. Peggy Hinkler, has, number one, absolute authority to fill the board vacancy of the 6th district, which is an elected position by appointment. Number two, does she have absolute authority to reorganize and appoint board officers? Number three, does she have absolute authority? Oh, I already talked to her about it. Number three, does she have absolute authority to prepare the board's agenda? Now, there were several documents that I referenced, which comes out of the statute. And this is all has to do with the authority of the emergency manager to make the appointments mentioned above. Now, all of the documents that I read that was presented to me by Dr. Hinckley was like hearsay. She said Indiana Department of Education, DUAB, and ISBA instructed her, but there was no statute or ordinances that said specifically what she said that she can't do. Now, I saw in the paper today, this afternoon rather, that we have no authority. So if we have no authority, and I wasn't trying to be facetious, the agenda that you all have that was prepared by Dr. Hinckley, and you see on it that all these appointings, so that agenda cannot be accepted because we can't vote. As I read, she sent me an email saying we can't vote on anything. Therefore, to function as a board, you have to be able to get motions and to vote. Therefore, that can't be accepted. That agenda can't be accepted. I was not allowed to prepare an agenda for our meeting because the board internal meetings, internal thing, we don't work for the Gary Community School Corporation. So it is my opinion, based on the statutes that I read, and not on hearsay, that Senate Bill 567 has not been amended by the General Assembly, and it does not say that it gives the emergency manager absolute authority to make these appointments of an elected official and board officers. That statute that I read to you, which I'll provide a copy to you if you want it, it says this section applies to the Muncie community schools. That's very clear. So I'm going to, those questions, Attorney Coleman, you want me to read them again one by one?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Mr. Bucks, as far as your questions go, first of all, we start off that we understand that Dr. Hinckley is appointed by the DUAB board. And DUAB has their own attorneys that they've hired to interpret the law the way they see it. In this instance, there is a difference of legal opinions as far as how these statutes should be interpreted. And as you've already seen by the different opinions you've received, they are different. There are different interpretations. But in the interim, while legal matters are being addressed on a legal matter to determine how to proceed, there is still business that this board does have to conduct. And as far as the appointment of officers, even though there's a difference of opinion, where DUAB is taking the position with Dr. Hinckley that these positions have to be appointed, the statute does also allow her to receive recommendations from the board regarding who this board would want to appoint as their officers. But in the interim, we have litigation that is pending that is addressing the need for a declaratory opinion on some of these issues that are in dispute. And also, we have various opinions from different attorneys and also from different agencies. So at this point, as the legal counsel for the Gary Community School Corporation, it is still important to recognize that the people of Gary do have an elected board who are sitting in these seats. As far as working out the issues, as far as the official powers and the official actions, once again, we already have a lawsuit that's pending, and we have different legal opinions. So those are not issues that we can resolve at a board meeting today.
Mr. President.
And
Bucks.
But as to the three items, I wanted an answer to. Number one, just a yes or no, to fill the board vacancy of the 6th district elected position by appointment.
There's a different legal opinion on that issue. DUAB is of the position that the power rests with Dr. Hinckley to appoint the different officers. And also, there is room in the statute for Dr. Hinckley to consult with the board to get the board's recommendations on different matters. So what I'm saying is those issues are being litigated and looked at, But in the interim, there is still business that has to be conducted. And pursuant to the statute 20-26-4-1, the statute requires that this board organize. It requires that no more than 15 days after the commencement that this board select a president, a vice president, and a secretary, and also the need for a treasurer. The issue in this case is that we have statutes that are with different interpretation regarding the governing body and also the authority of the emergency manager. But that does not negate the fact that this board has to have a president, a vice president, and a secretary, along with the treasurer. So it's the position of DUAB that Dr. Hinckley has the authority to appoint these positions, but also pursuant to the statute, which indicates that the emergency manager shall consult with and consider recommendations from this governing body. There is also effort to make sure that the board's opinions and recommendations are heard while these issues are being litigated and looked at different levels.
Attorney Coleman, thank you, but as for the recommendation that's prescribed in Senate Bill 567, I have provided Dr. Hinckley a list of recommendations on 2 different occasions in writing, and I have not received any response whatsoever. So as far as taking recommendations from the board, I think that's rather moot at this point. And the other thing about Senate Bill 567, what DUAB says and what ISBA says and Indiana Department of Education says, as an attorney, you know that anything has to be by statute or law, just because they say it and don't provide a specific statute. Now, just to put a broad statement out that says Senate Bill 567 nullifies your statute. Give me the statute that says it nullifies that statute. That has not been presented at any point at all on any of these vacancies. It is not supported by a specific statute or law. Senate Bill 567 has not been amended, and the thing that she said that she can do, that she say, DUAB say that she can do, and if I wish they were here, they didn't provide, show me in that statute, it is not in there. So we have a law to go by, and that law supersedes everything. That statute, Senate Bill 567, does not say that. That one phrase which everybody is dependent on, like Lisa Tansel, was about, it gives her all authority. Now, she read it too fast, that it does not apply to the Gary Community School. It applies to the Muncie Community Schools. That is a difference. You can't just carte blanche use something to apply all over when it specifically states. Matter of fact, if you go to page, that's on page 25, if you go to page 27 of Senate Bill 567, then you see where 567 goes back to the Gary Community School Corporation as to what they can and cannot do. So therefore, what I was telling you is that that particular thing that they are saying, as a matter of fact, they never cited one. I just went in there, and because they used the word gives all authority, to find out what that phrase was in that Senate Bill 567. And it wasn't that one section which I told you, 11.IC 6112385B. But it's specifically in bold writing, and as you know, when something is bold in a law, it's added emphasis on it. And it specifically says it applies to the Muncie Community Schools. So, after having said that, the other answer, I guess, will refer to the preparing the board's agenda. I guess your answer will be the same way. So I'll move on. As acting president of the Gary Community School Board of Trustees, I now declare a vacancy for the Board of Representatives for the 6th District and will accept letters of interest from the community. Until February the 13th, 2018, the board reorganization will take place after the November election was 3 seats that will be vacant on this board. And as president, I now declare this meeting adjourned.
Mrs. Lewis, Attorney Lewis, Coleman, I'm sorry,
You're
forgive
fine.
me. In the absence of a chair, can I ask a question?
Oh, the meeting's adjourned.
May I ask you a question? Okay.
The meeting's adjourned.
Uh-huh. My first question is this. You're currently retained by the Gary Community School Corporation, am I correct?
Yes,
I mean, your firm is.
yes, you're welcome.
Who approves that retainment now?
Well, Mr. Tolliver, that item, as far as the personnel or the law firm, I would suggest that you set up a meeting with Attorney Robert Lewis if you want to discuss the law firm and their work for the school.
All I'm asking is, who pays, I know the board doesn't approve those bills anymore, and the superintendent, so who approves the bills for the attorney, right, the monthly bills for the attorney?
Well, Mr. Tolliver,
Okay,
you know
I'll
you have
find that answer, thank
an
you.
emergency manager.
My second question is this. I find it contradictory. And first of all, let me just say this, that I understand the law, and I know that the fiscal and the administrative duties have been placed in the hands of the emergency manager. However, and this has nothing to do with the present emergency manager, my relationship, at least from my perspective, has always been complimentary and supportive. However, it does not extend, in my view, to the rights of this community to elect its leadership. This is not, to provide a couple of analogies, this is not the 20th century townships in South Africa. It is not plantations in the 19th century. We have a right to elect our own leadership. I don't always agree with those decisions, but those are our rights. We pay taxes. And I see the same diminishment of minority votes and influence throughout this country that we see that took place with the state. You cannot show me, Attorney Lewis, you just said that we've got to make decisions about legal matters. Am I correct? Didn't you make that statement, that we've got to make some decisions about declaratory matters?
Well, Mr. Tolliver, what I indicated is that right now, there's interpretations of this statute that are being addressed at different
Who's they?
levels.
Who's they?
Well, you have an emergency manager, which is appointed by DUAB. DUAB is of the position that it's that the emergency manager who will appoint the individuals to fill the offices. There is a statute which determines by law that this board needs to have a president, a vice president, a secretary, and also a treasurer.
That is
And
not
so
what that is not what I asked you. That is not what I asked you. I asked you, did you not mention to us 5 minutes ago that we were going to expect it to take some type of action on legal matters and declaratory judgments? Did you not say that?
Mr. Tolliver, your president at the time, Mr. Bucks, he presented to me 3 questions that were related to the organization of this board, the vacancy, and also the agenda. And so I provided a response to Mr. Bucks. I've also indicated to this board that there are a lot of statutes as it relates to Muncie, as it relates to the Gary Community School Corporation, and also as it relates to the duties of an emergency manager. And there are different interpretations of the statute, but as far as the agenda is concerned, there is a specific statute related to the officers of this governing body and also the appointment of a treasurer.
I know I'm a little slow, but that's not what I asked you. I asked you, did you make the statement that this board would be expected to make decisions about declaratory matters in the future?
My response to you when I used the word declaratory.
In this meeting, did you make that statement?
If I may, Mr. Tolliver.
Surely.
When I referred to the word declaratory, I was referring to the fact that there is pending litigation. When litigants seek a declaratory judgment, what they are asking for is that they are going to a judge and asking a court of law to provide its interpretation of state statutes. So I've indicated that there is pending litigation that relates to the interpretation of the statute, Freedom of Information Act, and other issues that are pending in the court of law. And that's
Okay.
what I indicated.
All right. I got one more, Mr. Pickett. I want it to be clear to the people that are listening. We cannot be asked to make decisions that increase liability on the taxpayers of this community, yet we don't have a voice. There's inconsistency here. And just let me share with you that there is a MO that is taking place, not with the person that is representing them. I'm not talking about Dr. Hinckley. I'm talking about a process. And if you go in Detroit right now, what you see is the same MO that is taking place here right now. What we're going to see down the line, but this is a potential hypothesis. We're going to increase this debt without any say-so, or we're going to be asked to pay without any say-so, or they're going to dissolve this district and our resources without any community input. Now, I don't necessarily blame the state, because we had people locally that really caused this problem in large part.
Yes, they did.
Several of them are in this room today. I will say this, that I'm here to work with the emergency manager, but there are philosophies that communities govern itself. We're asked to pay taxes. Don't take away my voice, but ask me to pay for the decisions that other people make that don't live here. And I think that that's a relevant question in this community. We're faced with a situation where in 2 or 3 years, this thing can be down the drain. And everybody's going to be looking at our buildings, the hundreds of millions of dollars of assets that could very well be in the hands of private interests or people from outside this community. All I'm simply saying to this community is to be aware. And I must say this, as much as I support, and I do support, I've had nothing but positive input from the emergency manager. Let me just share this with you. There's no way in the world I'm supporting a referendum in May. No way. And I'm going to be out here every day fighting and informing the community about this, because had we approved that referendum last year, we would have no control over where that $7.5 million would go annually. None. Let's not make that mistake in 2018. Thank you.
Attorney Coleman, I have a question. In a statement that you made, is that the emergency manager is supposed to consult this board. Dr. Hinckley has never called us together to consult us about anything, not even about the vacancy we have on this board now. She has not done that. She does not respect us at all when it comes down to making decisions, and that is not fair. We are elected officials, okay? And I am also a precinct committee person. I do a lot of voting in this city, and consequently, I would be glad to work with her if she would work with us. Thank you.
Attorney Coleman, according to Robert's Rules of Order, any board member can call for the adjournment of a meeting. Would you please tell us whether or not the action that the acting interim president took in terms of adjourning this meeting without any feedback or any motion or anything from any other member of the board, was that a legal action according to Robert's Rules of Order?
Ms. Moore, at this point, I would say his movement and seeking adjournment at this point was not acted upon by this board. So this board did not adjourn the meeting, but has continued it. So there is a quorum present. So based on my opinion, the meeting is still taking place.
So the meeting is still legally in process?
Yes, because
Okay.
based on the state statute, you have a quorum, and so you have a meeting.
And so, since Mr. Buggs has left the meeting, then it will be to the secretary, Mr. Bailey, to assume the leadership role of
Yes,
conducting the meeting.
yes.
Okay, everyone, out of due respect, with the president resigning, Mr. Buggs is the president. Is that correct, Attorney
Yes.
Lewis? Okay, if the president adjourned the meeting, I feel like we have to respect the adjournment. I can't overtake his adjournment.
But it was never voted on, Mr. Bailey, and any member of this board has the same power and authority as any other member of this board. I asked Mr. Buggs for recognition before he made the move to adjourn the meeting, and was not recognized at that time by him. I wanted to clarify the statement that he made concerning the Muncie School Corporation on page 25. And I think all of us have that. And if we were to read the bold print, we would see that what it says in total is that notwithstanding any other law, an emergency manager of a distressed political subdivision appointed under 7.5 of this chapter shall assume and exercise all of the power, authority, and responsibility of both the executive and the physical body of the political subdivision during the time the political subdivision is a distressed political subdivision. Now, if we go back to, this section applies to the Muncie Community Schools designation under section 7.1 of this chapter, only if the board, meaning the DUAB board, adopts a resolution under section 7.1 F2 of this chapter, designating the school corporation, the Muncie School Corporation, as a distressed political subdivision. And we recall last fall, the Muncie schools were added to the watch list for the DUAB board, but it was not declared a distressed political subdivision. That did take place in January of this year. And so this statement actually is an exclusionary statement saying that until such time that any school district, and in this case, the Muncie, because it was in the hopper with Gary, unless Muncie is declared a distressed unit appeal, unit, it doesn't, this section doesn't apply to them. But it does apply to any unit of government or school district that has been declared a distressed political subdivision. And the Gary Community School Corporation had been declared a distressed political subdivision. I had several conversations with Dr. Hinckley. I had several conversations with Lisa Tennell. And what I said to Dr. Hinckley and to Lisa, you do not want to assume this authority or power because of the fact that it is a controversial thing that you will be doing that will not sit well with my colleagues or the community. And both indicated what had been said to Dr. Hinckley in a meeting in which several attorneys, one from ISBA, one from Indiana Department of Education, one from DUAB, and one on the call from the Attorney General's office said, no, it explicitly gives you all authority, all authority. And I said, but you know, sometimes you have to use discretion and common sense. You know, we have a lot of issues that we are confronted with. Very, very difficult decisions that have to be made. And if we are going to major and minors, and to me, this is a minor thing. We know now that this board has very little, if any, authority to make any decisions. Now, you can be a sage on the stage or a god on the side. We have been removed from being the sages on the stage. We are now the gods on the side. And the sooner we accept that role, then the sooner we will be able to move forward. Now, I have not hidden my belief that there are certain powers that the state and other attorneys, and I'm not an attorney, as I told someone in a meeting, I got my law degree from watching Judge Mathis and Judge Judy. So I know I don't pretend to be an attorney, but I do not think that their interpretation is correct. And this is what I'm hearing Attorney Coleman say, that until such time as there's a declarative judgment by the state as to whether or not the intentions of this Senate Bill 567 was to completely eradicate the power of the board for everything, voting on agenda, voting on acceptance of the minutes, voting on who sits in the seat for the 6th district, who is declared president, vice president, secretary. Until such time, we are the guys on the side, and I think that all of us said at least that our interest was doing something for the education of the children of this community. We're not here for our own egos. We're not here for our own future interests in politics or anything else. At the present time, we're interested in doing something for the 5,000 children that are in our school district and for the approximately 11 or 12,000 students who are in our city, to make certain that we have a city that they can feel proud about, and an educational system that is providing for them the best educational opportunities possible. And there are people in our community, I see Mr. Mays in the audience. There are people in this community who can carry the fight of what it is that we, as a governmental unit or entity in this city, can do or cannot do. There are ways in which we can fight the battle for what is right or what is not right. I think a lot that has been said and done in the state legislature and some of the things that are presently in the pipeline behoove us all to not sit here and fight among each other, and to sit here and to continually fight Dr. Hinckley. But we need to be fighting the real fight. And that's what we should be about. Thank you, Mr. Bailey.
First of all, it's not personal. It's business. The people of this community's business. I disagree with my esteemed colleague. I think it's a big deal when people don't elect their own representation. We fought that in 1954 with Brown versus the Board in the Civil Rights Act of 1964, that our vote counts. Our vote doesn't count now. Now, we can put whatever mask that we want on this, but we are a community that has no voice. Now, I understand that, but I understand the law, but I think it's important to distinguish about power of individuals and what the power of the community is to determine its own direction. And that's what I'm about. That we have a right. We're going to be asked to pay property taxes every year. And we don't have a say about where that money's going. We don't have a say about where's what's going to happen here or there, and then it's gotten to the point now they're saying we can't even elect our own leadership. They're going to determine who our leadership is. That's a dangerous proposition, and it's one that's happening all throughout this country. And if you doubt it for 1 minute, go online and read about the Detroit public schools, and you see the same MO that is taking place there and the same concern. It has nothing to do with Dr. Hinckley. Dr. Hinckley has been, in my view, she's responded to every concern that I've had. I didn't agree with everything, but she's responded. It's not personal. And I think that we have to distinguish the difference between personality and the difference and that in business. What do you think is going to happen if they close these schools down in 3 or 4 years, and we still got a $110 million debt? You think they're just going to let that go away? Or do you think they're going to say to us, the taxpayers, you still are responsible for that bill, even though you didn't have a say about it, even though that money went from wherever it wanted to go, you didn't have a say, but you still got to pay? I got a problem with that. And now they've even taken it so far that you can't even identify who your own leadership is. What's going to happen is, a year or 2 years down the way, this community is going to become so disinterested because they have no voice, anything's liable to happen. So all I'm saying to you is that I support who's going to serve as president. I don't support the process. And those that have known me for 50 years know that I'm consistent in my position. It's not about power, and it's not about politics. It's about philosophy. So thank you.
So,
Mr. Bailey, may I speak?
yes, you may.
Thank you. I agree with you, Ms. Moore. It's a process. Mr. Tolliver, you have stated how for the civil rights movement, we moved forward. And yes, we went through the judicial system. But in the process, we still went to work, we still educated our children, and we had to wait for the judicial system, in which that's what Ms. Moore, and that's my understanding, that's what Ms. Moore and Attorney Coleman is saying, is that we still have to conduct the business that we have been elected to do today, right now, at 6:44. I don't agree with how things going, Dr. Hinckley. I don't. I'm kind of like that, that's a bit much for you to be able to come in and say, turn this way, take 2 steps forward, look to the left, look to the right. I don't like that cadence. So when the answer comes through the judicial system, that's the bottom line. And hopefully, we will win that battle. But until then, we do have business to take care of in the Gary Community School Corporation.
You're welcome.
And I don't agree with Carlos too much, but I agree with him on the statement he just made, along with Ms. Pleasant. First of all, a lot of people have been chosen lately to positions that they don't know anything about Gary, Indiana. If they would have come to the board, like was stated, Attorney Coleman stated, and asked the board about some of these things, we're very knowledgeable. And I'll take this, the Gary Area Career Center. We had so many beautiful ideas for this place. It's unbelievable. But nobody has come and asked. I had Ford Motors to come over here, and Ford Motors was interested in setting up a mark assembly plant. And as I said in the last meeting, everybody's not going to college. We got to prepare these people to go right into the workforce. We had the airport ready to give us an simulator so young people could learn how to fly, and air traffic control. These are the type of thing. You have the largest minority construction company in the state of Indiana that's located right in Gary, and they were interested in coming in. But nobody has asked us anything, and I have a problem with that. I am an elected official, G212, 2nd District, Gary, Indiana. And when people don't come and ask about these things, it bothers me. That bothers me. And so consequently, I have a problem. Like Mr. Tolliver said, I have a problem with you not consulting the elected officials. 7 of us are elected officials, and we were elected by the citizens of Gary, Indiana, in our districts. So I wish Dr. Hinckley would come to us and start talking to us and not doing things just haphazardly. Come and say, hey, what you think about this? What you think about that? She may not agree, but I'd like to make my opinion known. Thank you.
Okay, Attorney Tracy, do you have anything else to add?
No, at this point, the things that need to be done, it's up to the chair, if you want to recognize Dr. Hinckley, so the board can go ahead and proceed with the appointment, or the recommendations of this board as far as your elected officers and also the treasurer pursuant to statute.
Well,
You still have a quorum, and you still,
as the one in charge of the board, I will not override the past president actions. As far as I'm concerned, we adjourn.
there was a comment with Ms. Pleasant as far as the business to be conducted. Because pursuant to Robert Rules of Order, there's not a motion on this floor for adjournment. And also, there's other business that you've had board members indicate that needs to be conducted. So as far as the legal opinion regarding Robert Rules of Order, the chair, by adjourning a meeting, when there were comments on the floor, people were asking to speak, that adjournment was not proper. Because as a board member, if you have something that you want to put on the floor, and you've already indicated to the chair that you had individuals who wanted to speak, and there was no motion for adjournment, to adjourn the meeting in the midst of a dialogue and things that were being put on the floor was improper. So at this point, to recognize the previous adjournment, which it would be my legal opinion that adjournment was not proper, there's still things to be conducted by the board.
You asked for a motion?
If you want to recognize Dr. Hinckley, and there is an agenda in place, there was already a pledge of allegiance, there was already a roll call. And there was
Well, I
also
don't
the
have a problem.
determination of a quorum.
I don't have a problem with conducting the meeting, but it shouldn't be any appointment until litigation has been completed. That's-
And once again, Mr. Bailey, I would just refer to the statute as far as 20-26-4-1, which deals with the organization of the governing body. And the reason why that statute is important, because it sets a timeline for the appointment and the filling of these positions, which is 15 days. And so technically, it would be hopefully by January 15th, 2018, that this board will have its officers in place and its treasurer.
So with that said, what is your legal recommendation?
My recommendation would be to allow Dr. Hinckley to come before this board and ask each board member for the recommendation of who each person believes should serve in these different positions. Also understanding that there are legal issues that are being worked through, but in the interim, to make sure that the board in its elected position also continues to conduct necessary business.
Okay, well, that's
You wanna
your legal
recognize-
opinion, and I recognize Dr. Hinckley.
As Attorney Coleman mentioned, both she and I and Mr. Lewis met today to look at how we might take care of board officers given the conflicting statutes. So at this time, I would like to ask each individual member to make a recommendation on who they believe should be the board president. I would start with Mr. Tolliver, if I may.
Thank you, Dr. Hinckley. I have a recommendation. However, I'm going to abstain because I cannot validate a process that I don't agree with. Thank you.
Ms. Pleasant?
I would nominate Ms. Nellie Moore.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Nellie Moore.
Thank you, ma'am.
I think that we should leave things just the way they are until we get a legal understanding. There's no rush. We can't do anything anyhow.
Well, Mr. Bailey, just to, the statute that is in force here requires us to reorganize before the 15th of the month in January. It also requires us to conduct the Board of Finance meeting, which is to follow this meeting. If we don't meet those expectations, I don't know how we resolve that. So obviously, I'm not in charge to make that decision. So if you are not going to nominate someone, then I would move to Ms. Moore.
I'll recommend that Mr. Buggs stay president and I stay secretary. And
Right now, I'm just looking at the president. Ms. Moore?
I recommend Mr. Buggs as president.
Ms. Moore?
I will serve as president.
Mr. Piggy?
Mr. Buggs.
Mr. Buggs?
Mr. Buggs.
All right, it is my appointment that since Mr. Buggs is currently vice president, Mr. Bailey is secretary, I would maintain those positions and appoint Mrs. Moore as president of the school board. I will also recommend the appointment of the treasurer to be our new CFO, Mr. Leonard Moody.
I'll agree with you on that one.
Thank you. We have the acceptance of the minutes. If there's any comments about the changes for Mrs. Patton, any comments or questions about those minutes?
First of all, before you go any further, we just stated who we wanted for president of the school board, and there was no collaboration or anything.
I took your recommendation under advisement.
Yes.
That's what the statute requires. It doesn't say that I have to necessarily, it isn't a vote, it's a recommendation.
It's a recommendation. Okay,
sir.
good.
Can that recommendation be appealed?
No, sir.
Well, then why ask us any questions and recommendations? If you're going to have sole authority of anything, then why ask the recommendation of the board if you're not going to accept it?
Well, I believe that earlier you just referenced that you wanted to make those recommendations, and I think Attorney Coleman indicated that's what the statute requires.
No, Attorney Coleman kept kept referencing recommendation, but my question was not about a recommendation in the first place. When I spoke earlier about this meeting, you have to accept an agenda. For a board to function, you have to make motions and vote. You said that Senate Bill 567 said we could not vote on anything. So therefore, if you can't vote on anything, you can't accept an amendment, you can't have a finance board meeting because that requires accepting an agenda. All of this is illegal, period. The whole meeting is illegal. When I said adjourn, I adjourned because I couldn't ask for a motion to adjourn because, as you said, per your memo to me, that we could not make any motions or vote on anything. That includes everything. Therefore, this whole thing is null and void. And the other thing is, your authority to make these appointments is not supported by any law. I asked you then and I ask you now, what specific reference in Senate Bill 567 gives you absolute authority to make these appointments? And you haven't provided it to me. DUAP hasn't provided it to me. Just cite me one law. Just cite it, that's all I asked. I cited several.
Mr.
They have
Bucks,
not
you-
been changed, you know, so.
I'm not here certainly to debate what your
This was not a
interpretation is.
debate.
I'm not an attorney.
I know you're not, this is not a
I
debate.
have been directed by the state of Indiana to proceed as we have. So I would just now turn the meeting over to Mrs. Moore so we can complete the agenda, so we are in
Wait a
compliance with the
minute, turn
law.
the meeting over to who?
I appointed her president, so
Oh,
she
no.
needs to finish the agenda.
Mr. I move that we adjourn. Mr. President, Mr. Acting President, she can't do that.
Meeting adjourned.
She can't do that.
Meeting adjourned.
Oh, no, she can't do that.
Meeting adjourned.
I just want to alert to you that if the Board of Finance doesn't meet, we are not in compliance with the law, but that's your decision. I listened to your recommendations, sir.
Our recommendation,
I listened to them.
you had 3 for Buzz and 1 for
It's not a vote, sir.
You sit down. I ain't the one.
Well, with half of us still here, we complete the second half of the agenda. I've made my statement concerning my beliefs about what should and should not be done. And so, as the appointed, not elected, but appointed president, we will continue the meeting as adjourned, return, and we will eventually find out whether the business that we conduct is accepted. We do not have any correspondence, nor do we have a superintendent's report. Enough has been said in terms of the president's report. I will certainly serve until such time as it is determined that I should not or should. We will now go to Dr. Hinckley's Emergency Manager's Report. Dr. Hinckley?
Thank you, Ms. Moore. I would like to introduce to you the Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Leonard Moody. I know some of you met him before the meeting, Mr. Moody. If you'd like to stand up. And I also want to introduce to you the Chief Academic Officer, who is Dr. Lucille Washington. Many of you know her as a retired principal. They will be attending the board meetings in the future to participate and answer any questions that may come. Anything either of you would like to say?
No, lots been said.
Yes, thank you. All right. To continue, on December 20th, I hosted Matt Vors, who's the Executive Director of the State Board of Education, and Ron Sandlin, who's a staff member. They invited me to go with them to tour Roosevelt, Williams, and Beveridge schools, and later that day we met with the Beveridge staff to introduce the newly assigned principal, Eric McMahon. I just want to say that I finished reading the 60-page contract for Roosevelt, And when we do the public forums, we are going to explain to our community this very complex relationship with Roosevelt, where people think we can simply put them out, when in fact the school corporation entered into a new 5-year agreement with Roosevelt. And that 5-year agreement, the only way it can be terminated is if they have 3 successive years, counting now, of failure, according to what I've been told by Mr. Vors, who is an attorney. Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Moore.
Mr. Tolliver?
The school corporation has had a number of contracts in place. Doesn't the state law allow the emergency manager to revise, manage, or even terminate existing contracts within the district?
Well, we've been seeking legal opinions about that. We've been told by I haven't been told directly, but in conversations with Mr. Vors, who is an attorney, he does not believe the contract can be terminated. However, I believe that when the contract was signed, it was at the time that the district knew it was going to be in a takeover. So my question is, how could the school corporation enter into a 5-year contract with an entity when in fact they're about to be taken over? So we are asking those questions of other officials as well as legislators to try to get more clarity about that. We have a meeting later this month with Tom Jackson from Edison Learning to complete some. We have the right under the contract to charge them, since we do not get their ADM money, for certain services that are provided to Roosevelt.
Can a follow-up question to that is this. We have Roosevelt that has had 6 straight years of Fs. Doesn't have a student population to support the school. Maybe the neighborhood can support maybe 10% of the school. I see that in March 18th, it was projected there would be an enrollment that would be close to 600 or 700. Where are those students going to come from? Well, they're going to come from because they're going to have to close another Gary High School to accommodate a special interest from the outside that has not produced. Edison Learning is a pariah. Those board members that supported it without a public hearing, including those that were in leadership, did not do their due diligence and should be looked at. I believe this. We project $25 million in 2018 with ADM money, and we're talking about giving a failed private interest company with 6 straight years of Fs 20% of that money with no accountability. This is what's happening throughout the country in terms of private interests coming in here, particularly in minority communities, diverting public tax dollars designed for education. Not directing it to you, you came in after the fact. But that's here. And what's going to happen is that, I can't believe it, we are catering, what's going to happen to those schools like West Side and Word Emerson when you close them? Well, you're going to give them to a charter school, because not you personally, but to a charter school, because they don't have the facilities to maintain the updated curriculum. It's all designed to divert our tax dollars and our assets. Edison and Roosevelt, and I love Roosevelt. I taught there for 6 years. It was the best years of my life, educationally. But that does not dismiss the fact that Roosevelt, its 3rd floor, I believe, is still closed. Its wing is still shut down. Yet we're going to keep that school open to feed private interests? It doesn't make sense. And I don't believe that the law was designed to not break regular contracts. It was designed to deal with existing employee contracts, like teachers, whatever, if they were in place. But the law says all contracts. So Edison should apply to that. And we can't keep on feeding private interests that do not produce results for this community. We talk about children, but what about the children at Roosevelt? We talk about taxpayers. Where is our tax dollars going? I just heard today that I got a text from a parent that says that Roosevelt is flooded over. And they said, well, we expected money from the school district for those repairs. I got it in the text right here. And that's what's been happening for the last 5 years. We've been diverting money that should have went to our regular schools over to a special interest. I just don't, I know it can't change. I know things may not be changed in the long run, but I can say this to you, the community should be informed, and you can't say that you didn't know. Thank you. Oh, one last question. Eric McMahon, I'm sorry, the principal at Beveridge.
Yes, sir.
I was disappointed to hear about that. It's been my personal experience that I can't, my personal observations of 3 years does not extend to why that person got that position. He badmouthed this district and the city. Let me
Mr. Tolliver,
Okay, I'll leave, that's a personnel matter. I'll
personnel
leave it
matter,
alone.
thank you.
All right.
Dr. Hinckley.
In preparation of the deficit reduction report that is due at the end of January, we held 2 public meetings. The first was with the Fiscal Management Board, the second with all elected officials. And we will have an additional meeting on the 25th. I'm praying January 25th. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Thank you. To present to the Fiscal Management Board the draft of the deficit reduction plan for further discussion. And that will be advertised as a public meeting. It will be at 4 o'clock in the afternoon in our building. I met with Mayor Karen Freeman Wilson on December 22nd, and we now have a twice-a-month call scheduled. Because of our frigid temperatures, we did not reopen school on January 4th or 5th, and these will be make-up days at the end of the year. I want to report progress on finances as a result of the plumbing repairs. We have reduced the Ward Emerson water and sanitation bills as follows. Our summer bills for July and August for water there were $6,487.35. Due to the repair of plumbing, those bills in October, November were $971.67. The sanitation, which is the wastewater, so with a lot of running water, the bill in July and August was $13,931.50. The October-November bill was $1,700. These are important steps that are obviously allowing us, if you look at the money we will save in a year just from fixing the plumbing, it far exceeds what the plumbing cost us and certainly allows us to get our finances in a forward direction. We will not be at DUAB this month for a loan. This is 2 consecutive months in which we have not asked for a loan request. We will be there in February because of the reality that we have 3 payrolls in March. At your table is a new protocol that we established. We did a Dr. Fred Seaman did a customer service training with our secretaries in the buildings in December 13th. And one of their concerns is that we didn't have established rules and regulations for parents or visitors to the building, particularly when they come in and act in aggressive and disrespectful manners. So I met with those members of our security folks who are sworn Gary police officers to seek their advice and counsel on how we need to prepare this. So this is what resulted. So as you go into schools now, you will see these posted. We are also, you see Detective Lilly here, who is working to improve our communication with the Gary Police Department. We have suggested an MOU with the police department so that we can have some supervision of our security, and he's working to do that. But that protocol includes helping our schools have backup from not only our officers but others when there is disruption at the school.
Dr. Hinckley,
Yes, ma'am.
may I ask you a question?
Please do.
As a parent, I see this walking in the door, and you tell me everything that I cannot do, but is there any way for you to list what I can do? because, I understand the first 5, and I agree with the 6th, with the interruptions in the classroom of learning. But me as a parent, how do I, when I enter into the building, say I would like to speak with the instructor of my student, and can that be posted so that I can follow proper protocol when I enter the building? Do I need to phone first? Do I need to write something in a letter of that nature so that I can have an opportunity? I may just want to meet the teacher. I may want to come by and spend the afternoon in the classroom facility with my child. A lot of times we tell people everything what they can't do, but we don't give them anything definitively of like, these are the steps that you take in order not to get arrested.
Yes, ma'am. Well, the poster was developed at the advice of the police officers to use the no, because it draws attention to those people. Most people follow the rules. It's those people that don't. The last one has been of concern from teachers and principals, because we've evidently had a past practice where if a parent came to the office and wanted to see a teacher, we would actually let them go to the classroom, interrupt. The police officer or security person might have sat in the room while that parent might have aggressively attacked that teacher in the hallway, because usually when we come. So we're helping people to understand that we really need to schedule that time. So we're working with the office staff to help people to understand, first of all, if a parent is upset, they need to see someone. Now, if the principal is not available, they may see a social worker, they may see the school counselor. But we know it's important, especially when I'm upset as a parent, that they speak to someone so they hear their concern. But also that appointments with teachers need to be scheduled during their prep time or at other times when the teacher can be available. But we're working on that with office staff, but certainly we can do something in addition to indicate that we welcome their involvement in meeting with the teacher and we'd ask them just to do this. So I appreciate that suggestion. The last item is, again, we have a vacancy on the board. And again, as I met with those officials, that included 2 lawyers and 1 under advisement, Ms. Moore characterized exactly what my feelings were. As you know, these are not my opinions. I am directed to do these things by the people to whom I am responsible. However, I believe that the process of filling the board vacancy can be done in a process that would mirror the way you would have done it. And that is to advertise this is an open position starting tomorrow for 30 days. And then on February 11th, I'm sorry, my old eyes, 21st and 27th at 6 p.m., in which the Board of School Trustees would sit with me to interview those people from District 6 that apply, and that I would receive recommendations from the school board as to who that appointment should be for final appointment on March 13th. It is my intention in doing this so that as elected officials, there is no one that knows this community better than you do, and it's very important to have that point of view, and I believe we can comply with the law and yet still have the involvement of the school board in selecting that District 6 representative. And that's all I have, ma'am. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any other questions? Dr. Hinckley, comments? Thank you, Dr. Hinckley. I do not have any and do not see any requests for public participation. So we will now move to board comments. Mr. Tolliver?
First of all, I would like to acknowledge the board president, Mrs. Moore, and share with her that she has my support.
Thank you.
again, Dr. Hinckley, when we discuss issues, I'm always going to be open, and I think you know that. But then again, my first responsibility is to the people and the taxpayers of this community. And I intend to be observant. I intend to, just as I was opposed to cronyism and nepotism when it was done internally, I'm going to take the same position about it being done externally. I'm not here to be liked. I'm here to do my job. People are expecting us to protect their interests. We've got taxpayers out here who are my age, young like me, who are on set incomes, and we have to protect their interest as well. So all I'm saying is this, we're going to move together, and I'm going to listen to the recommendations, but I do hold this philosophy that a community must govern itself. Now, we can't handle the administrative or the fiscal aspect, but at the very least, we can determine who's our leadership. That's democracy. Or otherwise, we might as well be in some third world country. Thank you.
Mrs. Pleasant?
Thank you, Madam President. I don't want to keep regurgitating the same thing over again, but, ooh, Dr. Hinckley, you got to do better as far as having some input with us. I understand that you are in full control, and from now on, I would like for the terminology to be used, that we have been taken over. We are no longer an entity of ourselves. We don't have a say-so. Right now, I feel as if we don't have a say-so because we have to follow whatever your step and lead is. Now, I don't mind following, but I don't want to be dragged. And that's what I'm feeling that is happening right now, is that I'm being dragged or pushed to do it. When, as Mr. Piggy says, we are capable. The 6 of us now are capable. Sometimes we may not, we act on emotion. But there are people here that once that subsides, once that calms down, we can think with a really level head. And right now, everybody's sore is open. Everybody been wounded. So it's the fight or flight, it's that struggle. Talk to us. Ask us some opinions. Mrs. Moore, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pleasant. I want to address Mr. Buggs, Mr. Bailey, and Mr. Piggy, the 3 board members who adjourned and walked out of the meeting. And I see Mr. Antoine Clemens in the audience, who was formerly a member of this board. And those of you who have been around since 2006 know that I have served in every office that there is on the board. I've been president twice, vice president twice, and secretary once. I have been nominated prior to tonight for president of the board, and I ran and lost for the first time to Mr. Clemens. And other times I did not accept the nomination. I knew coming here tonight that Dr. Hinckley would make the appointment, because certainly she would not risk coming here and making the appointment without first consulting me. And so she did, and I told her that I would accept it if I was appointed. Now, I am a person who believes sincerely that leadership is something that is necessary for an organization to move forward. And leaders do one thing: they lead. And so I believe that my voice at this point in time for this board will be an added value. Now, I am not trying to say anything about Nellie Moore that is building up, or it's not my ego to say that. But since 2005, when I made the decision after retiring to run for the 3rd District School Board, I have done one thing, and that is to try to make the best decisions for this district and for our children. I cannot say that I've always done a good job at that, but I can say that it has always been my desire to do that. And there come a time in our lives when God allows us to do things, and He places us in positions for such a time as this. And I believe that that is my such a time as this. And so I want to work collaboratively with MGT. I want to work collaboratively with the staff and the citizens of this community and my colleagues on this board, all 5 of the remaining members of this board, and the 6th person to be appointed, I guess, in March, so that we can redefine. We have to redefine who we are. And I believe that there is something of importance for us to do. And I do not accept the fact that I have no authority or that I am powerless. I have a voice. And I will use that voice for the betterment of our district and the improvement of our educational system. With your support and with your prayers, then we will be successful. We will overcome all of the obstacles and issues and challenges that we face. I thank you, Ms. Pleasant, for your support. I thank you for your confidence, Mr. Tolliver, and I will strive to do the best job possible. And with that, the next meeting of the Board of School Trustees will be held on Tuesday, February 13th at 6 o'clock p.m. at the Gary Area Career Center, 1800 East 35th Avenue, Gary, Indiana. The board will accept a motion for adjournment. Oh, one moment, Dr. Hinckley, you have something to
Well,
reset.
we have to convene the Board of Finance. It will just
But
take
we
a
have to
few
do it
minutes.
after this one.
After you adjourn, yes.
Okay.
I forgot to mention my report. January 17th at Ward Emerson, starting a 5:30 tour, 7 o'clock public meeting, 23rd at West Side. In that, we would certainly invite members of the board, and we will have your name tags and your, as part of this larger group of an advisory committee, to listen to not only the information presented, but then to listen to the ideas and suggestions of our community regarding what school looks like in Gary Community Schools for 2018-19. These are important decisions. They are difficult decisions, and we certainly welcome your participation in, as we have sent that information to you for the 17th and 23rd. Those public forums are just that, 5:30 tours. Those are open to the public as well as the 7 o'clock meeting. So we will prepare for your participation.
Thank you. The regular meeting of the Board of School Trustees is adjourned, And we will immediately call to order the Board of Finance. Roll call, please. Ms. Patton.
Mr. Carlos Tolliver. Here. Ms. Darlene Pleasant. Here. Ms. Nellie F. Moore.
You need to call all 6 names.
Mr. James Piggy. Mr. Norman Bailey. Mr. Robert Buggs.
3 present, 3 absent. We will go with the appointment of the President of the Board of Finance. I will say that it has been past practice that the Board President serve as the Board of Finance. Dr. Hinckley, if you wish to make your appointment.
Would like to be consistent with your past practice, and that is that the President of the Board of School Trustees serves as the President of the Board of Finance. And so, Mrs. Moore, we would ask you to serve in that capacity.
Fine. Appointment of Secretary.
The current Secretary, Mr. Bailey, we would ask that he serve in the role of the Secretary to the Board of Finance.
We will do that.
And then I'd like to have, the only purpose, as I understand the Board of Finance, is to review investments. So I'll invite Mr.
I would
Moody
like
up.
to say, though, that there's no appointment of the treasurer for the Board of Finance, and that's usually the district treasurer.
Yes, although I don't have it listed as a treasurer, but he will be the treasurer since we've appointed him. Thank you for that. So, Mr. Moody, would you like to share information on our investments, sir?
Good evening. As it relates to investments, I've looked at the accounts for the district, and I've also talked to staff at the district, consulted with them to find out what our investment situation is. Right now, we do not have any investments. Our cash flow has not permitted that, so we don't have any investments. So there's really nothing to review related to that at this time.
Any questions of Mr. Moody by board members? Thank you, Mr. Moody,
You're welcome.
and we hope that picture will change by this time next year. If there are no questions, then the chair will call for an adjournment of the Board of Finance.
So moved.
Thank you. Knock on wood.